This is an ABC News special report. The Republican National Convention. Now reporting from Milwaukee, David Muir.
Perfect timing. We're hearing the cheers of the crowd here behind us. Good afternoon. We're coming back on the air from the Republican National Convention right here in Milwaukee. On this day one of the Republican Convention, Donald Trump making news this afternoon. You can see this is the reason why. That is JD Vance, the junior senator from Ohio, the Republican who has been chosen by Donald Trump to be his running mate, walking there with his wife, Usha Vance. They have 3 young children, 7, 4, and 2. JD Vance is young. He's 39 years old. He turns 40 in just a couple of weeks. Famous author of Hillbilly Elegy, writing about the working class upbringing that he had and the unique challenges facing so many millions of families who make up the working class here in this country. He served in the Marines, came back, went to Yale Law School, got into politics. For a time was a very vocal critic of Donald Trump, but a number of people have pressed him through the years, including us here at ABC News. He said in looking at Donald Trump during his first term, of course, Donald Trump would like another term in the White House, but during Donald Trump's presidency, JD Vance said he proved himself on a number of key issues, from the economy to foreign policy. He said, I believe his record has earned him another chance at being president. JD Vance for the first time on the floor of this convention hall here in Milwaukee. Rachel Scott is down there on the floor for us covering the race for president. And Rachel, you have just learned that the Vice President Kamala Harris has reached out to JD Vance, and they will very likely face each other in a debate.
Exactly, David. I just talked to a source who confirms that Vice President Kamala Harris did, in fact, call Ohio Senator JD Vance after Trump revealed that it would be his running mate. I'm told that they did not connect, but I'm told that Harris did leave a voicemail. This crowd has been eagerly awaiting JD Vance, and they're already adapting to the news, David. Just take a look here. So many people writing in the name JD Vance on these Trump Make America Great Again signs. They were chanting JD Vance, JD Vance, JD Vance. You're starting to hear some of the cheers as he makes his way down the aisle. David, we're also learning just how much of a heads up Senator Vance got ahead of this announcement. We know the former president had this sort of public vetting process. He said that this was a highly sophisticated version of The Apprentice. A source also tells me that Senator JD Vance was called about 20 minutes before the former president made that Truth Social announcement, David.
Extraordinary. Thank you, Rachel, for that reporting. 20 minutes before the announcement on Donald Trump's Truth Social, JD Vance getting word that he would be Donald Trump's pick. As you know, this was narrowed down in the end to about 2 or 3 people. Marco Rubio was on the short list, the senator from Florida. Governor Burgum also on that list, but in the end it would go to Senator JD Vance. It will be Trump Vance. In fact, an image just in to our control room of the campaign plane where they're already putting Vance, the name on, just like they have done here in the hall, so many of the supporters of Donald Trump. There you see it, Trump Vance on the campaign plane. The other breaking headline just moments ago, our John Carl talking with former President Donald Trump. And John, I was sitting right here with you. I heard you ask him, what was it about JD Vance that made him the pick?
Well, he acknowledged that Vance had said some pretty tough things about him years ago, 2016 campaign. But he told me, this is a exact quote, he said, once he got to know me, he was all in. And he said he's a very smart guy. He talked about how he's Yale Law School. He called him a real intellect, noted that his wife also went to Yale. And he said, I get along with him great. Seemed to come down to that. And I asked him how, President Trump, how do you plan to use JD Vance in the campaign? And at first he said, I'm going to leave him in Pennsylvania. I mean, because, Pennsylvania's the state. If Trump can win Pennsylvania, he's likely to be elected president again. And JD Vance from neighboring Ohio, can speak to a lot of the working class Pennsylvanians.
We all know that Donald Trump needs someone who's going to be his vice president, like he needs people around him also to have chemistry with him. This has always been one of the things that you got to check that box. Senator Marco Rubio, Governor Burgum was a new friend of Donald Trump, a new supporter out there on the trail. It was said that Marco Rubio didn't have the kind of spark with Donald Trump that perhaps JD Vance had. And we also know Don Jr. Was a huge supporter of JD Vance. One thing, John, though, I thought was interesting, Donald Trump was asked in recent days if JD Vance's beard was going to stop him from selecting JD Vance, because as we all know, Donald Trump likes to choose people right out of central casting. Trump said, I hadn't heard that. He said, but actually, he looks like a young Abraham Lincoln. So.
Yeah, and let's face it, Don Jr. has been known to sport some facial hair. So maybe that's one of the reasons why he was so enthusiastic about him. But look, he also said that JD Vance is somebody extremely popular with the base of the party. But I think you hit it right on the nail on the head. He's comfortable around Vance.
Martha Raddatz, you were on the floor. You were asking Donald Trump supporters here in the hall what their reaction was to JD Vance, and you were actually surprised. It was very varied.
I was surprised. They were all said, of course we'll support him, but a few of them were disappointed. A couple I talked to said they were hoping it was Doug Burgum. Another supporter said, we love JD Vance. We love his age. They all talked about that. He is the future of the Republican Party. But one delegate said to me, I like him. He's very smart, but it worries me. Maybe he's like Bill Barr. He was smart, too. And I said, what do you mean by that? Are you talking about loyalty? And she said, exactly. I'm worried about his loyalty, but enthusiasm on the floor. And I'll tell you, it's easier walking around America right down there than driving across it.
Yeah, it is.
It's like walking in America.
You can sample voters right here in one hall. And Lindsay Davis, when you walked into the studio here, our little broadcast booth in Milwaukee, you had Hillbilly Elegy in your hand. We've all been sort of revisiting the book, knowing that there was a good chance it would be JD Vance. And it's somewhat telling in the book some of the themes that directly connect with this campaign.
The book says so much. And go with me here for a moment. Kendrick Lamar, the rapper, he actually has the #1 song on the Billboard Hot 100 right now. It's called Not Like Us. And it's a cultural phenomenon. Similarly, another cultural phenomenon in 2016 when that book came out. And that was really the world's introduction to JD Vance as he was writing his memoir. And he uses that same quote, not like us, when he's talking about academics and elites. He goes on to say there is no group of Americans more pessimistic than working class whites. And really, this book is an attempt for us all to understand that rage of the working class population, many of whom who've migrated toward Donald Trump, people who see Donald Trump as seeing them, as fighting for them, and JD Vance is one of them.
Yeah, Donald Trump is convinced JD Vance can make that argument. As John Carl says, he's going to leave JD Vance right there in Pennsylvania.
And that's the place you'll want to be. And we just heard that Joe Biden made some remarks about JD Vance just a moment ago. He said he is a clone of Trump on the issues. And he sure is. He's a clone of Trump on all the issues, foreign policy, immigration, you name it. He's right behind Donald Trump.
As we look at these live pictures of JD Vance, this is the gentleman who will be on the ticket, smiling there, giving his wife a kiss there, live on camera, getting the official nomination as vice president. Let's listen here for a second.
Amen. He must embrace his obligation to the American family, the American worker, and the American soldier. He must believe that America is exceptional. And be prepared in the tradition of our founders to pledge his life, his fortune, his sacred honor to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. He must share the values and principles of our presidential nominee and be trusted to faithfully implement the will of the people. JD Vance is such a man.
JD, 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 JD.
A man who loves America and will represent our people with moral courage, strength, and honor. JD is a living embodiment of the American dream. He came from humble beginnings, and even as his life took him to places he might have never imagined, he never forgot where he came from. Ohio values are in his blood.
There you hear it in the hall, the description of JD Vance for the supporters here in Milwaukee who learned just a short time ago that JD Vance would be the pick for VP on this Trump ticket. It is now Trump Vance. We've seen the campaign plane. We've seen the placards here in the hall. The handheld sort of signs people are holding up have already been changed with their own handwritten sort of addendum to put Vance on the card as well. An extraordinary sort of circle closed here, at least when it comes to supporting and standing by Donald Trump. We know JD Vance said along the way, I can't stomach Trump. I think he's noxious. He's leading the white working class to a very dark place. He told NPR at one time. He said, I'm never a Trump guy. I never liked him in a PBS interview. And yet all these years later, he is now going to be on the ticket with Donald Trump. That in and of itself is an extraordinary sort of turn. But this is politics in America in the year 2024. And we heard what Donald Trump told John Carl just a short time ago. That Trump is very aware of the things that JD Vance has said through the years, but he is convinced that Vance is the partner at this moment and that he sees eye to eye with Donald Trump on all the key issues. Before we go to your local news for many of you in the East, John Carl, I wanted to get to you on one more thing that I think will make a significant headline at this hour. You also asked Donald Trump about the phone call with President Biden. An extraordinary moment as well, given the fact that these two men, other than that debate where they didn't even shake hands, for years before that they haven't talked. How did he characterize the call?
I mean, this is as bitter a rivalry as we've ever seen in American politics. And he said the call, these were Donald Trump's words, he said it was very nice. He couldn't have been nicer, is how he summed up his, we know it was a short call. We haven't heard anything on the record from the White House to really characterize it. We've heard it was a good call, kind of both sides, but this is Donald Trump saying that Joe Biden couldn't have been nicer.
Which is really encouraging here, really, to hear from both sides. One last quick follow-up, because an interview with Donald Trump, whether it's on the phone or in person or what have you, the speech Donald Trump will give here in the convention hall. Did you press him on the tone of that speech? What are we expecting?
Yes, I did. He told me that he has completely ripped up the speech that he had written. He said he said it was a humdinger, which I take to mean a very negative takedown on Joe Biden. And he says he's done entirely away with that, and he's written a new speech that's going to emphasize what he said is unity. Now, we still have a few days until that speech on Thursday night. We'll see how it is, but he said that he's scrapped it, and he is looking to emphasize unity, which has not been something that Donald Trump has been known to emphasize. I mean, it was a very different tone. And by the way, he also asked me a lot of questions about how is it over here. He wants to know. He hasn't been inside this hall yet, and he wanted to know what it was like. He says he's feeling tremendous enthusiasm. You know, that's characteristic of Donald Trump. But what was different in the tone? I mean, he was really kind of marveling at the fact that the shooting. I mean, he talked about a quarter of an inch, a half an inch, and it would have been entirely different. He talked about how he looked over to the screens to make a point, and it was just at that moment that the bullet went by him. And if he hadn't done that, it would have been an entirely different situation. So I asked him if that had changed him. I said, going through an experience like that, he almost died. And he said, well, I don't like to think of it that way, but yeah, I think it did. It did change me. So we'll see. Again, what he said, what he told me. New speech, emphasizing unity, and said some nice words about Joe Biden. These are all new things from Donald Trump.
New things, just one day in, not even the full day here at the convention, already quite a few headlines. Republican National Convention, thank you all for here in the booth. As you can see, we have the best team assembled here for our coverage of the convention over the next couple of days. The breaking headline here this afternoon, obviously Donald Trump securing the math to be the official nominee right around the same time, then announcing that JD Vance of Ohio, the junior senator, will be his running mate. There you see it. That is the Republican ticket this November, Donald Trump and JD Vance. Our coverage continues on ABC News Live, abcnews.com. As I mentioned, for many of you in the East, your local news is standing by, and I'll be back with the entire team right here for World News Tonight. The entire team here in the broadcast booth and down on the floor. We'll be back in prime time, 9 o'clock on ABC News Live, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on the network for our primetime special. Again, we'll see you at 10 p.m. Eastern, right here tonight. Now, for many of you, it's your local news. Good day.
This has been a special report from ABC News.